Hello, welcome to Podsongs. I'm Jack Stafford and I interview inspiring people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today, I'm speaking with America's sleep doctor. When TV wants someone to come on and talk lullabies, they ask him. He's been on the Dr. Oz show 39 times. He's serious about sleep. And seeing that none of us need convincing about the quality of a good night's sleep, we can all learn a lot with the help of Dr. Michael Breus. I want to say thanks to Becky. You've got a great assistant there.
Thanks. Isn't she awesome?
She is. She's on the ball.
I drive her crazy. She doesn't have any choice but to be on the ball. I do. I like today, like you're one of probably north of 13 or 14 appointments that I have today.
Oh, wow.
So
Gosh,
she better be on the ball. She's amazing though. She runs my entire life. It's awesome. I love it. Every bit of it.
We all need a Becky in our lives.
It's so funny. Everybody says that. Everybody's like, everybody needs a Becky. I'm like, dude, trust me. I get it. Absolutely. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I've been checking out all your stuff. It's so interesting. You're really, because many of my guests, I have no experience about what they're talking about. I'm talking to professors about psychology or...
well, if you sleep, then you have an idea of what I talk about.
Exactly. So, I mean, you could go to any party or any dinner party and everyone wants to chat to you,
It drives my wife crazy. You don't understand. Like you don't understand. Like we actually have a deal that when we go to a party together, if people don't know who I am, I'm not allowed to say that I'm a sleep doctor because here's what happens is, hi, how are you? What do you do? Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Breus. I'm a sleep specialist. My wife just rolls her eyes and walks to the bar. It's like, here we go.
For a sedative to help us sleep.
Exactly. Well, it's just, here's the thing that's so cool about what I do is it's a mystery, right? It's like, everybody does it, but nobody actually knows what they do when they do it, right? Because sleep in and of itself is amnestic, right? I mean, it's you don't remember falling asleep. You don't remember waking up. You're not supposed to. So the whole process is kind of mysterious, yet I've spent 23 years now studying, what it is, how it works, and hopefully how to get better sleep. And so, now is a particularly interesting time for us to work together. I would argue because of COVID, right? I mean, let's be very straightforward, dude. I feel so purposeful right now because so many people are having such a difficult time falling asleep, staying asleep. I mean, look, the stress that we're under now, it's not normal stress, right? I mean, I have stress, but I mean, I live in LA. I have traffic stress, right? I don't have stress like this kind of stress is, you know what I mean? Like the stress is different. Like I'm worried about like my family's health, like not just one person's health, my entire family's health, like that's a new type of anxiety. I would argue that most people never really thought about. And then here's the craziest part is we're stuck, we're quarantined, right? And so our schedules get all wonky. Right. And so we don't wake up at the same time anymore. We don't have a commute. We don't go to work. But we still are processing and doing all of this kind of stuff. Well, that whole thing of staying at home has completely screwed up everybody's sleep schedule because nobody's following a schedule anymore. And what's so fascinating is by not following a schedule, they've actually made their sleep worse. Right now is arguably the time when every single person on the planet could actually be getting better sleep, but they're not.
It's ironic,
they're actually choosing not to, which is in and of itself kind of an interesting, observation.
Because I've heard you say that that's the number one tip you would give people is the same time every day, wake up and go to sleep.
Exactly. And just the wake up time. I don't even care about the bedtime as much. Because the bedtime's going to be a little bit variable, and if you want to stay up late and watch a movie with your partner, or you want to go out, or, I mean, I guess you can't during quarantine, but you know what I'm saying? Like that part's variable, but the wake up time, solid, got to be rock solid every single day, including the weekends, right? That circadian consistency is what we're talking about. And I mean, if you were if you're thinking about a song for sleep and you're thinking about what is sleep, the key factor, I would argue, has to do with consistency.
Okay.
Like
You're a step
throughout
ahead of me here.
all of sleep, it's all about how can I be more consistent, because my body operates best when it's consistent, when it knows what it's doing from a timing perspective. So in that 24-hour, remember, your body can't tell time, but it kind of can, right? And so there's different functions that will occur at different times of day. If you're not giving your body those signals on a regular basis, your body gets confused and doesn't know what to do. And that's when stuff gets messed up with sleep, if that makes any sense.
So do you really wake up between 6:13 and 6:15 every morning?
Every single day.
Within 2 minutes of each other?
Yeah, it's crazy, dude.
Without an alarm?
Without an alarm. Yeah. The only time it changes, quite frankly, is like if I have alcohol the night before, like if I have like 1 or 2 glasses of wine, and I don't follow my rule and I drink it a little bit too close to bedtime, then I definitely will find myself sleeping in a little bit longer, like to 6:45, and I feel like crap when I do it. You know, like, I mean, it's unbelievable. I'm 52 years old. You think I'd have figured it out by now, right? But you know, you're out and you have a glass of wine with your, you know, your spouse or whatever, and you're hanging out or whatever, and you don't think about it. And that's kind of that's sort of part of the awareness that I think I want people to have. You know, historically, people just used to think, I'm going to go to that room in the back of the house, I'm going to turn off the light, something magical is going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And then 6, 7, 8 hours later, I'm going to come out and hopefully my batteries will be recharged, right? What I'd like people to do is maybe be a little bit more thoughtful about that process, right? And be a little bit more respectful of that process, because everything that you do better with a good night's sleep, literally everything, right? And so when we start to think about all the things that we want to do during the day, whether it's making music or it's, you know, educating or it's whatever our careers are, we're always going to do it better with more sleep. And so it's about quality sleep too, not necessarily quantity sleep. I think a lot of people get really hung up on 8 hours, right? I mean, the math doesn't even work for 8 hours. An average sleep cycle is 90 minutes long. The average person has 5 of those cycles. 5 times 90 is 7.5 hours. But like the math doesn't even work for 8 hours, you know? So I would argue that we have a big misperception that's going on out there. A lot of people think I have to get 8 hours in order to be healthy. Well, that's not true. Number one. And number two, think about the pressure that everybody's putting on themselves, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I talked to a couple people who said that they read a book about sleep and they felt terrible after they read the book because they felt like they weren't sleeping well. And so they had to do all of these things to change their sleep. And they were failing miserably at trying to change all these things because a lot of things don't change so easily, you know, like stress, you know, or television's on or caffeine or things of that nature. So I think what we really have to do as a society when we look at something like sleep is sleep is healing. That's what it is. Sleep is healing. Sleep is recovery. Why on earth would you not want to do something that would set yourself up for good healing, right, and good recovery? Yet as a society, we watch Netflix until 2 o'clock in the morning, and we drink caffeine for dinner, and we have 4 glasses of wine to put ourselves to sleep, right? And we don't need to, right? Like, it's a natural process. It's like breathing. Like, you're gonna do it.
Try not to do it.
Right, exactly. Well, and what's interesting is there used to actually be a therapy called paradoxical intention, where we would tell insomniacs, try not to fall asleep. Like, do everything you can, except for like drinking caffeine and things like that, but do anything you can to try not to fall asleep. And of course, after a day or two, they got so exhausted, they would fall asleep. So, it's just an interesting phenomenon because we all have to do it, yet none of us really understand how and when and why. And so that's kind of my goal, right? And I would argue that could be at least one of the underlying themes, right, of the song or the thought is just, number one, it's a mystery, but it kind of doesn't have to be. Also, number two, the biggest thing that people tell me all the time is they say that they feel out of control of their sleep. And I'm here to tell you, man, 100% you can control your sleep. 100%. Okay. It's not hard. It's just about following the rules, being consistent. But I have very close control over my sleep. If I want to go to sleep at midnight, I do. If I want to wake up at 6:13, I do. Right. And so I think anybody can have that level of control. Now, to be fair, there are going to be people who have things like anxiety disorders, right? Panic attacks, phobias, things of that nature. Well, that's going to throw a little bit of a wrench into the works for sleep, but it's not impossible. Everybody can sleep. And I believe that everybody deserves better sleep. Everybody deserves better sleep, right? And that doesn't mean you have to have the best night's sleep. It just means you have to have a better night's sleep. And maybe that's being thoughtful. Maybe that's having a gratitude list before bed. It's one of my favorite things to talk about with my patients. Here's an interesting statistic, is if you're optimistic before you fall asleep, you fall asleep more quickly and you have more positive dreams.
Oh, there you go.
I think we could all use more positive dreams right about now. And so for me, I'm always trying to talk to people about the ideas of positivity and lowering their stress. Because honestly, dude, like if you're looking for one or two things that have the biggest effect on sleep, it's consistency and it's stress. Those are the two big ones. I mean, obviously things like caffeine, alcohol, cannabis, all of that other stuff is big. And I get it, and it all needs to be addressed. But at the end of the day, it's a natural process. Everybody is capable of sleeping. There is a group of people that have something called fatal familial insomnia. So it's a tumor that grows in a very particular part of the brain in this one Italian family. And over the course of time, it's a generational thing. And it happens at around 30. And by the time they hit like 35 or 40, they've completely eroded their entire sleep center. And they go crazy. And they have fatal familial insomnia. Now, that's the only case I've ever heard of where somebody dies from insomnia. Okay. Now, what's interesting is whenever somebody does a research report or like a television show on it, everybody in the fucking universe thinks they've got fatal familial insomnia. Okay. But of course, you have to literally be from this one genetic family in Italy. But sleep is one of those things that we can all do. I think of it a lot. I call it the great denominator. There's really three things that everybody must do in one particular way. You must breathe air, you must drink water, and you must sleep. Those are the only three things I'm aware of that you have to do that way. I mean, yeah, you have to eat, but there's a lot of different ways to eat. You don't actually have to exercise. I think plenty of people have proven that in their lifetime, unfortunately, right? So, these are the three fundamentals, I would argue, of the human condition. And I think if you can get those three things right, everything else is kind of gravy on the taters, if you will.
Yeah, I did your chrono quiz today.
Oh, what did you come out as?
I came out as a bear that wants to be a lion.
Yeah. Lots of bears who want to be lions. So I'm a wolf, believe it or not. So being a bear is actually the best one to be because there's more bears actually than anybody else. But we've discovered that there are bear hybrids now. We've discovered there are early bears and there are late bears. So you're probably an early bear.
I'm an early bear.
Yeah, it's quite fun. We've had over 2 million people take the quiz now.
Wow.
Yeah. So we really have like real statistics, real data on it. Like it's really fun and interesting stuff. But at the end of the day, what we're discovering is that these chronotypes are really lifestyle tools. Like, I mean, it's cool that it helps you with sleep and it tells you when to sleep and when to wake up and that kind of thing. But like, as an example, there's a chapter in the book called When to Talk to Your Children. And it's really interesting. Because like, as an example, my daughter, I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's taking an exam right now. So she just texted me to be quiet. And she said, homeschool. And so, she's very interested in certain aspects of sleep, but not others. So like, as an example, if I walk into her bedroom in the morning and I say, hey, good morning, Carson, how are you? She's like, coffee, right? Like that's about all I can get out of her. But if I walked into her room at 7:00 at night, when her circadian rhythm had shifted, and as an adolescent, she would be far more awake. And I walk in and I say, hey, Carson, how's your day going? I'm in there for an hour and a half. Right? So if I want to have a closer relationship with my daughter, I need to understand where her head is, and when she wants to have that relationship with me.
Wow.
And that's where the key lies. It's turned into a communication tool. I mean, I've got couples now who understand each other significantly better because they're different chronotypes. You know, I always laugh. Like, have you seen those apps for dating, like Match.com and eHarmony? Like, why don't they ask sleep questions?
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, think about it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in the dating universe, I'd want to know, does she like it warm or cold? I want to know what side of the bed she sleeps on. I want to know if she snores or not. And I want to know if she has a firm mattress or not. And I'm a night owl. I'm up until midnight every single night. If I can't date somebody that goes to bed at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because my girlfriend is she did the test as well.
Yeah,
so she's a late bear.
So well, you're still compatible because you're in the bear category, so that's good.
Because I like to go to bed earlier, but so she complains that I'm leaving her alone in the evening. You know, so
how late does she stay up?
Well, a couple of hours, but I don't really like that time because it's sort of dead time. You're tired, so they're just watching TV. Yeah. But I like to get up in the morning and do your meditation, your yoga. That's quality time.
Absolutely.
So that time is not equal at the end of the day and the start of the day. So how can I convince her to?
You can't. You're an early bear and she's a late bear. You don't want to convince her, but what you want to do is teach her. Okay. Right? And so the good news is you're still within the bear universe. You just happen to like to do things a little bit earlier, and she happens to like to do things a little bit later. Not as late as what I like to do, but which is good.
I couldn't live with you.
No, you could not live with me. I can guarantee you of that. It would not go over well, especially if you like to go to bed at 9. So what I think you should do is come together and find times and activities that coincide together. Because both being bears, you actually have a lot more in common than you might imagine. Right. And so you can actually look at some of those activities together and actually be much closer to them. The biggest one, of course, is intimacy. That's the question that everybody always wants to ask me about. And we can talk about it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's a hormonal issue. So the way the book is structured is we look at hormone fluctuations based on chronotypes, right? And so your chronotype is a genetic predisposition for your body to want to go to bed at a certain time and wake up at a certain time. It turns out that this genetic predisposition functions across all hormones in your body, which is kind of unique. You wouldn't have expected. Like, there's one thing that goes across literally every single hormone in my body. Yeah,
that's a lot of hormones. Yeah,
a lot of hormones. So there's over 300 circadian rhythms in your body at any given time. It's kind of fascinating. Like, your liver has its own circadian rhythm. Your lungs have their own circadian rhythm. Heart, own circadian rhythm. Also, interestingly, disease states have their own circadian rhythm. Not something that you would have thought of previously. Give you a great example. We've discovered fairly recently, within the last 10 years, that we can administer chemotherapy at a particular time in someone's circadian cycle, and we can use less chemo, and it's more effective.
Wow.
Less poison, better progress. All we did was we changed the timing of the administration. So when you start to look at things like this and you start to understand this has medicine implications, this has intimacy implications, it has activity implications, all of those things. But let's get back to intimacy, because people always want to know about that. So you need 5 hormones in order to be intimate, that are raised. You need estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, adrenaline, and cortisol all need to be high, right? You need melatonin to be low, all right? So we did a survey. 74% of people have sex between 10:30 and 11:30 at night. I'll give you one guess what their hormone profile looks like.
Terrible.
Exactly. Melatonin is high, and all the things that are supposed to be high are low, right? So that's hint number 1 as to when you should be intimate with your partner. Number 2, what do most men wake up with in the morning? An erection.
Healthy erection. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Like, if that's not Mother Nature telling you when to use that thing, I don't know what is. Right? I mean, think about it, right? And so you can have this. So what's fun about the book and about the topic, right? Because sometimes intimacy can be a little bit difficult topic for people to talk about. But now all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more objective, because what we've discovered is by being intimate at the times based on your chronotype, people get better connection. People actually physically perform better, right? And so when you know what your chronotype is, you know when to do things throughout an entire 24-hour cycle, your entire life gets better. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, sex in the morning is generally speaking what we're recommending.
So you're more than a sleep doctor. You're a circadian doctor.
Yeah, I would say so. Sure. I would happily take on that title.
Because your book is The Power of When.
Correct.
Great title.
Thanks. A little Eckhart Tolle, tip of the hat.
Sure.
But the next book is coming out. I'm actually working on it now. It's very interesting. So we're taking chronotypes and we're layering on body types. So endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph. And what we're developing is a sleep and movement protocol that will give you energy 24/7. So you don't need caffeine, you don't need monster drinks, you don't need any of that stuff. We're developing programs very personalized for bears, for lions, for dolphins, and we're teaching them when to move during the day, because movement turns out to be incredibly important. And talking back to COVID now, that's one of the biggest problems. Like, I have a celebrity client and she tweeted out, she said, I've taken 200 steps and it's 2:00. Right? Like, I've done like 7,000 steps by the time 2:00 has come around, right? And the point she was making is nobody's moving, right? Remember, sleep is healing and sleep is recovery. If you didn't do anything to recover from, your body doesn't need to sleep. So you end up with light, crappy sleep, and it just becomes perpetual. Again, if you're not following a consistent schedule, like I do, I go to bed at midnight. I wake up at 6:13 every day. Once I get up at 6:13, I have a morning routine that I do. I have my green drink, right? I walk my dog. I have a 7-minute meditation, and I do a 19-minute Wim Hof breathing, and I'm ready to start my friggin' day, right? And that's the consistency of that morning routine. I also have consistency in my evening routines, right? Again, our bodies really do best functioning in a consistent manner. Now, just to be clear, you can be off by 5 or 10 minutes here or there. You don't have to be, crazy. Oh my God, Dr. Breus, I didn't turn off the lights at 10:47. I don't give a shit. Okay. But there's flux on either side. But if you have a general level of consistency and you can be a little militant about it and really zone in on it, the results are amazing.
I know what you're saying, because I've been, people struggling with this lockdown, because I've been, for 20 years, I've been freelance and working from home. So one day I can get up at 6, next day I could get up at 8.
Right.
Complete freedom. I've got some ideas, I work late. And yeah, it struggles. It throws me out of whack, really. I really struggle to nail it down.
Well, also what's interesting about creatives is creatives have a tendency to be night people as well. So most of my creatives, it's a little interesting that you're not a wolf, because a lot of my creatives, like songwriters and artists and things like that, have a tendency to be night people. I'm curious, at any time in your personal life, like maybe when you were younger and maybe you were more involved in music or things like that at that particular time period, did you find yourself being more of a night owl, or have you always been more of an early person?
Well, when I was younger, more social, did stay up later. But if I was on my own, I prefer to go to bed earlier. I write the songs in the morning, so yeah.
Oh, so that's interesting. So here's what's fascinating about writing songs in the morning. So I actually there's a chapter in the book about when to write a song.
Oh, really?
I think, yeah, it's either there's one when to write a song, and I think there's one when to write a book. But what's interesting is we have these time periods right after we wake up. So in the early morning, right around in that 5:30, 6 o'clock range, our brain has the most REM sleep that we're going to get in the entire night. Happens at the last REM cycle. What we know is the period of time between that REM cycle and you being creative, the closer that period is, the more creative you are. So, and you've already said that. I wake up in the morning and I've got the song in my head, or I've got the tune, or I've got the words, and creativity just literally opens up out of your brain. Yeah. That makes perfect sense, especially for a late bear. Okay, because that's exactly what you're doing, is you're getting that very last REM period, and right when you come out of it, boom, all that creativity is there. So that's exactly when you should be writing your songs.
Okay, great. Oh, I haven't read the book yet, but
Dude, you got to read the book.
Yeah, I'm going to read it, because I've always been a bit obsessed about this finding the perfect rhythm, the perfect cycle, and because I was very into Ayurveda.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you look at historic Ayurveda and you look at my animals, They're pretty close.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah. Because they're always, they're big on this circadian medicine,
Yeah.
and swim with the river, swim with the tide.
Exactly. It's literally about finding your rhythm. And one thing I also want to be clear about with your audience is it changes over time, right? So the rhythm that I had when I was an 18-year-old young man is very different than I have as a 52-year-old, older guy. Yeah. Right. And that's going to change, and that's supposed to change. Right. So there's this whole concept that we call chronolongevity, right, which is this idea of circadian changes over time. So as an example, if you have, I don't know if your parents are still alive, but if you have parents or grandparents, a lot of times they're like, it's 4:30, I want my dinner, right? Like they want to eat early all of a sudden, right? That's actually due to circadian timing. So what's happening is their melatonin is slowly reducing in terms of the amount that's being produced, and the time at which it gets produced is moving earlier in the evening. So it's making them feel sleepy earlier, which makes them hungry earlier and makes them want to have the blue plate special, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, going in early and being able to have, going into the diner at 4:30 and getting your dinner at 5 o'clock type of thing. And so we see that happen a lot. So just like I was describing the situation with my daughter in the evenings, you can do the exact same thing understanding seniors in the evenings, but they do the opposite. They want to go to bed early. So seniors love to wake up at, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning type of thing. And so we see a change across the lifetime. Also for women in particular, we actually see a change across menstrual cycle in some cases. So depending upon where their menstrual cycle is and how heavy the flow is and things like that, that can have a big effect on circadian rhythms as well. We address a little bit of that in the book too. So the thing I want people to understand is balance. Sleep is balance, it's healing, and it's recovery. Whatever you can do in order to allow your body to get there, you should, right? Remember, sleep is not an on-off switch. It's like slowly pulling your foot off the gas and slowly putting your foot on the brake, right? There's a process, has to occur. If you let the process occur, it will.
Yeah. And what about changes throughout the seasons when the nights are longer and shorter?
Yeah, so winter times can definitely be difficult because you've got less sunlight. One of the big things that we see from that perspective is when people don't have a lot of light exposure, that affects their circadian rhythms. Remember, light is the one thing that has the largest effect on your circadian rhythms. You have these very particular cell in your eyeball called melanopsin cells, and these react with a very particular frequency of light, what's called blue light, that's in the 460 to 480 nanometer range. When that wavelength hits this eyeball cell, it sends a signal back to the middle of your brain that says, turn off my melatonin faucet. So you have to be careful about things like light at night and things of that nature. And as we get older, those effects can change as well, right? And so as we get older, our eyesight dims, our corneas begin to harden or yellow. And so that light exposure that comes in can have a pretty dramatic effect on us as well. So when we look at things like wintertime, right, where there's not a lot of sunlight because the earth is so far away from the sun, we know that people are going to have a little bit of a riff in their sleep schedule. So what's the fix? Be consistent, right? Set an alarm and wake up. I have people set an alarm to go to bed, right? Just to remind them, right? Because here's the thing that happens, right? Is you're hanging out, you're goofing off, you're doing something, you're watching TV, whatever, and you forget, and all of a sudden, holy crap, I looked up and it's 12:45. I usually go to bed at midnight. What the hell am I doing? Go to bed, Michael. That kind of thing. So I think it's just a matter of, being consistent and understanding that during the winter time, you may need to pay a little bit more attention, to your sleep.
Maybe sleep longer or?
Well, I'm not convinced that you need to sleep longer. What I will tell you is you should listen to your body, right? Again, don't use an alarm. Your body should naturally wake up when it's done sleeping. Now, I don't want you to sleep until noon, right?
I couldn't do it.
That's not going to work very well. I get that part. But you should be able to find that place, right? One of the things one easy way that people can do it is take the chrono quiz, because I actually email you and tell you exactly when you should go to bed and when you should wake up, and caffeine and all that kind of good stuff. So I make it very easy. But if people wanted to just run an experiment on themselves, there's an easy experiment that people can do. So as an example, we know that the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes long. And we know that the average human has 5 of those cycles, right? And so 5 times 90 is 450 minutes divided by 60 is 7.5 hours. Most people have what we would call a socially determined wake-up time. So most people don't not wake up with an alarm. Most people have to have an alarm because they got to get up for their kids or work or school. That's what we call our socially determined wake-up time. So let's make the math simple. And let's say that your socially determined wake-up time is 6:30 in the morning, okay? If you count backwards 7.5 hours, because remember, 5 sleep cycles, 90-minute cycles, you now have a bedtime of 11 o'clock. It's very simple. Just go to bed at 11 for a week and see what happens. Here's what ends up happening to a lot of people, right? So if you end up being a lion and you go to bed, let's say at 11, well, number one, you probably didn't even make it to 11, right? Because you're a lion, and you probably woke up at 5:30. So if you counted back 7.5 hours from 5:30, right, they were going to bed about 9:45. Probably makes a lot of sense, right? And so you can really start to play around with the timing, and you'd be shocked at how much better you feel during the day. I've almost completely eliminated caffeine from my system because I just don't need it.
And you only sleep 6 hours a day?
I sleep 6 hours and 13 minutes a day. I have for most of my adult life. And I'm not a short sleeper. I'm a very consistent sleeper. Now I track my sleep. I wear an Oura ring, and I track my sleep. And I have great sleep. Like 50% of it's stage 2, 25% of it is deep sleep, 25% of it is REM sleep. Like I'm right in the numbers. I'm doing all the stuff I'm supposed to do, and I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm here to tell all of the people out there that putting hard definitions surrounding what you're supposed to do with sleep isn't necessarily the best idea. However, you do need some.
No, I love what you say, because you're all about, you don't need all these sleeping pills. You don't need these supplements. You don't need to take melatonin. I mean, how many melatonin supplements are there now? It's crazy, even for children.
There's quite a few. And it's interesting, melatonin is actually a good topic to talk about for people, because one of the things that people don't understand is melatonin's a hormone. It's not an herb, right? Like, would you go down to the local store and buy testosterone, right? Or estrogen? If you could, maybe you would, but it's not legal, and there's a reason it's not legal. But melatonin snuck in underneath a clause that happened that the FDA no longer watches it. So we have to be careful when we're using melatonin, number one. Number two, melatonin's really only good for jet lag, or for seniors age 55 and over, where their melatonin production begins to lower, right? But 99% of humans have plenty of melatonin on board. Plenty on board. So taking it doesn't make a lot of sense. That's number one. Number two, most people take it in an overdosage format. The correct dose is somewhere between 1.5 milligrams. Most people take it in 3, 5, and 10 milligrams. We're talking 10 times the recommended dose here.
Wow, that's a lot.
Right? So people overdose on it all the time, and they get crazy, weird dreams. And then they're like, what the heck is going on? My approach is a little different. So number one, I believe that sleep is a lot like love. The more you look for it, the less it shows up. Okay. Right. And so you have to set, it's a lot about set and setting, right? So it's a lot about, is my body ready for sleep? Is my mind ready for sleep? Then allow that natural sleep process to take over. So how do we make sure that our body is ready for sleep and our mind is ready for sleep? It's easy, right? So our body, we want to make sure that our body is healthy, and we've got all the things going in it that need to. There are 2 specific vitamins and minerals that are extremely important to sleep that most people are deficient in: vitamin D and magnesium. These are 2 things that most people are deficient in that have very, very important factors when it comes to sleep and circadian rhythmicity. So the very first thing I do for all of my patients is I say, let's figure out if you're vitamin D deficient and magnesium deficient. Let's get you on those, and let's get you back up to level where your body is where it's supposed to be, right? Balanced. Remember, it's all about balance. And so once we get them back there, it usually takes me about 30 days to do that. Then we really see how their sleep is going. And if they still have disrupted sleep, if they're different schedules, if they want to sleep more, if they want to sleep less, if they want to have better quality, that's when we start to look at things and see, okay, does this make sense? Does this not make sense? Hey, so from the sleeping, hold on one second. Come here, sugar. Sorry, my dog.
Okay.
Come here, buddy. Come on, buddy. He was asleep. Yeah. Okay, go on. Sorry, man.
No worries.
So wait, where were we?
So magnesium.
That
How
was
is
on
is there
magnesium.
how do we test for magnesium? Is that a blood test?
So you can actually do a blood test or a saliva test. You can ask your doctor about it. There are online tests that you can do. To be really honest with you, almost everybody's deficient in magnesium.
Okay.
It's hard to get it up through the root and the stalk of the vegetables because our ground has been so over-tilled that the magnesium is not actually in the earth. Our bodies actually don't produce magnesium. We have to eat it in order for it to help us. So I do like some supplementation in that arena.
Which there's some super magnesium supplements.
There are.
Maybe they're like, are they worth it, or which one?
Well, so for me personally, I take one called Mag SRT. It has vitamin B and magnesium in it, and I take it in the mornings. A lot of people prefer their magnesium in the evening because it helps them kind of chill out. So I don't have a problem. You can choose what time you want to administer it. Magnesium does not seem to have a sedating effect on me, so that's why I take it in the morning. I take magnesium with vitamin B. I have a cardiac condition, and so my cardiologist wants to make sure that I have magnesium in my cardiac muscle, my cardiac tissue. Like if you ever heard of people who are running a marathon and like drop dead in the middle of a marathon, it's because they don't have magnesium in their cardiac tissue. So that's the concern for me. So we're fixing that, which is great. But magnesium is a great thing for most people to take anyway. So once you get into your magnesium and once you get your vitamin D going, then it's really about your environment, right? So what kind of bed do you have? Is it noisy? Is there light? Temperature, smells, bed partners, dogs, cats, people, all of those kind of come into play. And they're fairly straightforward rules. You want it dark, you want it quiet, you want it cool. That there's nothing really new there. But what I would tell you is that for many people, the cooler you can make it, the better. For some people who are having significant sleep-related issues, heat turns out to be a major factor for them, especially a lot of women who are going through menopause and things of that nature. That can be a pretty significant factor as well. I've worked with a couple of products. One is called a chili pad that has been really cool. Literally, it's a pad that you put underneath your sheet and it sends cold water through it. And so women who are having menopause love it because it just chills them right out and makes them feel much better. So, I mean, there's some cool sleep technology that's being developed now that I think is very interesting and worthwhile. But once again, at the end of the day, there was a great study where they took 20 insomniacs who just had shitty sleep no matter what they did. And they took them into the woods and they had them camping for 2 weeks. And guess what? At the end of the camping, none of them had insomnia anymore. If that doesn't kind of explain it all.
Yeah.
Right?
Close to nature, no distractions. Yeah.
Sleep's a natural process, man. All of our artificial bullshit that comes with our headphones and our lights and our cameras and our whatever, that's not sleep. That's all that is affecting sleep in a negative way. We've got to create a space, especially now, because it's hard to create a space right now for sleep, because my guest room became my office and you know what I'm saying? Because we're all locked in and doing things and we're all in different places and different spaces. We've got to really teach people, hey, sit back, stop, relax, make space for sleep. I promise it'll do you some good.
Yeah, and you got to realize the benefits, like you say, of quality sleep. And then if you turn your attention on it, anyone, we're all intelligent enough to figure out, turn off the Wi-Fi, make sure the room's blacked out, make sure we're not too hot, all these factors. So one thing I also wanted to ask about was the coffee because going back to my girlfriend here, I know I'm taking advantage here. I should be paying you for a consultancy now, but it's a great thing about having a podcast.
I think you're the first person today who's done that. Come on.
So what are the benefits of waiting 90 minutes for coffee? Why shouldn't you just wake up?
So there's several. So the biggest one is in order for the body to pull up out of a state of unconsciousness, you need two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. Remember, we were talking about those for intimacy as well.
Yeah.
Those two, when they spike to wake you up, if you compared like adrenaline and cortisol to cocaine, to caffeine, it'd be like comparing cocaine to weak tea. Okay. That's the powerful nature of it. So when you add caffeine to a brain that's already got adrenaline and cortisol in it, it doesn't really do you any good. In fact, it makes you feel a little jittery, and that's about it. But if you wait just 90 minutes, the adrenaline and the cortisol drop pretty dramatically. And then when you drink the caffeine, it actually helps lift the cortisol and the adrenaline. You get more bang for your buck. So that's the reason that I ask people to wait 90 minutes. The more important one is to stop caffeine by about 2 p.m. because that's really the one that has the biggest effect on sleep, right? A lot of people don't realize that caffeine has a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours. That's only half, right? So if it takes 8 hours to get half of the caffeine out of your system, it all depends upon when you stop drinking it. So I'm always recommending to people, look, have one wake-up time, but stop caffeine by 2 p.m., right? Because if you stop caffeine by 2, most people are going to bed around 10-ish, right? As a bear, you would know. Although you probably go to bed a little bit early because you're an early bear, right? And so, like, if you stop, so in your case, I would say stop caffeine at 1, right? Because if you're going to go to bed at 9, right, we need to give you at least 8 hours to get out of your system. Now, there's also a hack that's in there, which is eat broccoli. Turns out that there's an enzyme in broccoli that helps you, that helps you roll through caffeine significantly easier. So if you've had caffeine late, have some steamed broccoli, which couldn't hurt you anyway.
So what about the people who can't wake up without coffee? They're just zombies.
So here's the thing. Number one, I would argue that they're either late bears or wolves. So they're probably waking up at the wrong time. So that's number one. But let's say they've got to wake up at that time for work or social or what have you. What do they do when they're that big of a zombie in the morning? Honestly, number one, water. Remember, sleep in and of itself is a dehydrative event. You lose almost a full liter of water every night just from the humidity in your breath. Okay, so think about it. If you drank alcohol the night before, remember alcohol is a diuretic. Once you break the seal and start to pee, you're peeing all night long, right? So you go to bed dehydrated. The act of sleep itself is dehydrating, and you wake up in the morning, you need water. You don't need coffee. By the way, coffee is also a diuretic, makes you have to pee. So you take you're basically a fucking raisin when you wake up in the morning. You need water. You don't need something that's going to make you dried out even worse. So those are the reasonings behind this sticking away from caffeine as long as you can.
And people have just got habituated to it, you think?
I think so. Here's a really interesting, there was a study that showed that the aroma of coffee was actually more stimulating than the caffeine ingestion itself. So just smelling coffee can give you enough of a mood enhancer to wake you up. I would argue you should drink water, get sunlight, and stretch and move. If you can do those things in the morning, honestly, dude, you don't need coffee.
It's just a bad habit, yeah.
Yeah, it's not so. It has no nutritional value whatsoever. It's a social thing, right? And so a lot of people, when they get to work, everybody gets their cup of coffee. You hang out, you kibitz a little, talk, whatever. Then you start your work, right? I understand the social aspects of it. I got no problems with it. Go decaf if you want. If you still want to be able to hang out with people, or tea. There's so many amazing teas out there. Plus, personally, I'd rather see people drinking, for example, green tea during the daytime or a matcha during the daytime. It's healthier, number one. It's got less caffeine. It's got L-theanine in it. L-theanine is great. It's a great mood stabilizer. It's a great calm focus, supplement. So I would argue that, again, what you're doing during the day is going to influence what happens in the evenings, right? And so we have to think about, what are we putting into this unit, this body of ours, and then how is it going to react 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours from now?
I've heard you mention guava leaf tea as well.
It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
And so, but not guava juice and not guava fruit, but guava leaf tea. So there's one study to show that it actually helps keep blood sugar stable throughout the night. And I love that idea because so few people bother to look at blood sugar as a sleep disruptor. It's really interesting if you think about it. I got a lot of people, and they say to me, Dr. Breus, I wake up at 2:37 every single night. They have a time. It's quite fascinating. They always have a particular time. Well, here's what's interesting about that middle of the night awakening is, before we fall asleep, our core body temperature rises. About 10:30, it hits a peak, and then it begins to fall. That fall is a signal to our brain to release melatonin. It falls until about 2:30 in the morning, and then it gets to the trough, and then it has to go back up, and it has to rise. When it's rising, it immediately puts our bodies into a less deep stage of sleep. So it's much easier for us to wake up and arouse. So that is part of the reason why people wake up at a very particular time, is because of this temperature that started going up, allowing for the body to become more easily aroused. The second thing I believe is blood sugar. So when I talk to people who tell me that they wake up at 2:30 in the morning, it's always very interesting because they say to me, I always say, well, what time is your last meal? And they say, well, I usually finish dinner around, I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock. So if you take 7 o'clock, right, and you take 2:30 in the morning, okay, that's 7.5 hours. You're out of fuel. Mm-hmm. Most people think that when you go to sleep, you put the car in park. I don't think anything could be further from the truth. You really put it in like second or third gear, right? Is your body is still functioning. It's still doing all of its stuff. You're not conscious, but it's very different. And so you still use a lot of glucose. So the thing you got to remember is there's a very high likelihood that you do run out of fuel. So one of the things I do is I tell people to try that guava leaf tea, just before bed. I tell them to try raw honey. That's another good one because it's difficult to digest and it keeps your blood sugar stable for a little bit longer. So I've had a lot of people who do that. To be clear, if you're doing keto or paleo, you wouldn't want to do that. Or if you're diabetic, please do not take a teaspoon of honey right before bed. That would be disastrous. But you know what I'm saying? Doing things to keep that blood sugar stable can be very, very important. Guava leaf tea is one of those tools.
I found that if I don't eat enough protein in the daytime, I can find myself waking up.
And what's also interesting is the opposite can occur as well. So like when people come to me and they say, hey, I just started a paleo or a keto diet and I'm just eating a boatload of protein, what they find is they get the keto flu, right? And they're up and they have insomnia for the first few days because there's so much protein in the system. Carbohydrates make you sleep. And a lot of people don't know that. But if you have too much protein, it can do the opposite and it can cause insomnia. So again, it's about balance.
Yeah, take your carbs at night. I mean, I don't think a lot of people take their biggest meal before they go to sleep, which is also a bit crazy. I mean, you wouldn't do that in nature, would you?
No, you wouldn't. It wouldn't make sense to do it in nature. Yet it's certainly something that we all do. Now, I personally I'm an intermittent faster. And so I do intermittent fasting every day. I've done it for the last 2 or 3 years. I love it. But I do intermittent fasting. You're going to find this interesting based on my chronotype.
Okay.
So I don't actually start feeding until usually like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'll eat from like 3 to like 9. But I don't go to bed until midnight. So I've got a little bit of a space for my body to kind of rest and digest.
Yeah. So but you haven't, because you've done that, you've trained your body to have more, because people are reliant on calories, like snacking every 2 hours. So how they make it through the night,
Right. So here's the deal is nobody needs food that badly. Right. And we are a society, no matter what country you're in. Well, it does to a certain degree, but most of the first world countries, we eat too much. We eat too much food and it's not necessary. And, there's such this crazy misnomer of people saying, I have to eat to get energy, right? We have so much energy that's latent in our system. It's unbelievable, right? It's called fat. It's called kinetic energy. It's called motivation. Like there's a whole host of things that we can do. We don't have to eat a donut or a bagel or a muffin or a Snickers, throughout the day in order to, even if it's healthy food, we don't have to eat banana chips all day long type of thing. Like just start to look at what you're eating and the amount. You might be surprised. You're probably overeating.
Well, it makes you more tired. Now you need calories to eat to burn the calories.
Exactly.
The blood's going there,
And then you get caught in this weird cycle, right? It's like I'm eating and I need more energy to digest my food, so I eat more, and it's just like, holy crap! Like, make it stop.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time. We're almost finished. Just got a few more questions, and
as many as you want, dude. I'm having a good time.
It's been fascinating. One of my other guests would talk about nose breathing. And
so let's talk about that. So there's a new book out. My friend James Nestor, do you know James? He wrote this book, Breathe. I just got it. Right, it's awesome. By the way, he's a super cool dude. And he talks about nose breathing in particular. There was also a book before his book. It was called Shut Your Mouth, I think, and it's all about the idea that our nose is really our filter and our air conditioning system for our entire skull. But so many people don't breathe through their nose, they breathe through their mouth. So the first question is why? Okay, so number one, if we want to go back historically, there's a couple of different reasons we think that this might be going on. The biggest one we think so far is this, thumb sucking. So when babies suck their thumb, they push up on the roof of their mouth, and they actually cause an apex, and they actually cause their skulls to get more narrow. And this pushes up into the sinuses and makes your sinuses become smaller. And so any irritant that gets in there, boom, all of a sudden you get all of that inflammation, and there's no space because of this thumb sucking that has brought this whole high arched palate in there. So what's happening is we're and pacifiers do the same thing. It's really fascinating. If you look at the skulls going back hundreds of years, because that's what James Nestor did, they were wider. Like we had wider heads 200 years ago, and that's actually better for our brains. So breathing is important. We like that. Number two, breathing through the nose turns out to be incredibly important because, again, this filtering system, the hairs inside your nose and the mucus captures all those particulates to keep them from going into your lungs and getting into your system and things like that. So if you find yourself as a mouth breather at night, you got a problem on your hands. You want to decongest for better rest. I tell people that all the time. So whatever you can do to, shrink the tissues in your nose, whatever you can do to move those tissues. So, there are breathe right strips on the outside of the nose that open up the nostrils. There's actually now internal strips that can go inside the nose called mute, M-U-T-E. I use it all the time personally. I use it when I exercise. I also use it if I've been drinking any alcohol. I like scotch. So my wife is like, put in your nose thingy if you're drinking scotch. So
and the blue blocker glasses, and you look like...
I've got my glasses on. I look like a total idiot and geek, but I sleep like a champ.
Yeah. No one's watching when you're asleep, are they?
Yeah, it's awesome. That's awesome.
So have you noticed with these snoring, because people with snorers always do not open their mouths, no?
Yeah. So what's interesting about snoring is, there's three different things that seem to happen with snoring, right? So one is this nasal congestion. So you lie down, blood rushes to the top of your head, and if you don't have a big sinus, it all kind of just hits you, and then you feel stuffy. So what do? You slightly open your mouth because it's easier to breathe, right? Most people, their tongue is actually too big for their mouth. The way you tell is if somebody sticks out their tongue, you'll see little ridges. So look at my tongue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same.
So you see the ridges along the side of it? That means that it's pressing against my teeth. That's called scalloping. So my tongue is actually becoming indented because it's pushing so hard to try to get out. So it has no place to go. So when I lie back, where does it go? Backwards. Mm-hmm. When it goes backwards, it cuts off my throat. When it cuts off my throat, it causes apnea. And that's what we have to worry about. Snoring in and of itself, while we don't like it, it doesn't necessarily cause the conditions that sleep apnea does. Over time, snoring will eventually lead to apnea, which will eventually lead to hypertension, cardiac risk, atrial fibrillation, stroke, death, all the things we don't want, right? So if you've got a bed partner that's snoring, number one, that's not healthy. There is no snoring that is healthy. And by the way, children snoring is not cute. It's unhealthy. That is a sign that your child cannot breathe. There's nothing cute about your child not being able to breathe, right? So, because I always hear parents come, oh, my daughter's got such a cute little snore. It's so adorable. I'm like, there's nothing adorable about that. Okay?
Yeah.
Because as soon as I say that's a signal that your child can't breathe, they're like, oh my God, there's nothing adorable about that, right? So, you got to have to sort of think that through. But at the end of the day, snoring is something that people need to identify and discover, do they have sleep apnea? Or is it more on the social side of things? And if it is, here's some interesting data. If you sleep next to somebody who snores, you lose approximately 1 hour of sleep a night.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Every night.
Yeah, I have the sleep cycle app. I use that to wake up at the right time, and when I need to make an alarm, wakes me up between these. And it also records now any noises, and I can hear what if I've been making any funny noises.
Yeah, so the sleep cycle app is okay. To be honest with you, it's pretty terrible. The best things are like these rings that we can actually have touching the body, because then we can get a lot clearer data and a lot more accurate data. So that has a tendency to work a little bit better. But generally speaking, I don't mind the sleep cycle app. It's so funny because everywhere I go, people walk up to me and they're like, what does this mean? And they show me their sleep cycle app. And I'm like, I don't know. Because everybody measures it differently, right? Yeah. The way Oura Ring measures sleep could be different than the way Whoop does, which could be different than the way Sleep Cycle does. So there's unfortunately not a lot of consistency within the tracker universe. Like you'd think everybody's measuring stage 3 sleep the same. They're not, because they can't actually measure it. There's only 2 or 3 trackers on the market that I'm aware of that can actually measure full spectrum EEG. And that's really how we measure sleep. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, you probably don't need to do that. People are just getting obsessed by these. It's how you feel, isn't it? You know,
dude, there's a new sleep disorder called orthosomnia, where people are so obsessed with the tracking that they look every morning at their tracker and they freak out about it. And they get anxiety from reading about their sleep metrics. I mean, come on, right? Like, holy crap.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But here's the good news. Everybody sleeps. Everybody still sleeps, right? I mean, no matter what happens, you're going to eventually fall asleep. And while it is a bit of a mystery, the good news is that we've been doing a lot of research for the last probably 50, 60 years. And we're learning a whole lot. And there's more to learn, and we're excited to do it. But people really do need to think about getting themselves prepared for sleep. Here's what I would say. I think sleep is a performance activity, much like athletics. So I'm a runner, okay? And if you're a runner, I can run a race with flip-flops and cutoffs and a torn T-shirt with a boombox on my arm, but my time's not going to be too good, right? But if I've got my Asics on, my dry fit wear, I've got the good tunes, I can run a 7:45 mile, no problem, right? If you have the right equipment, you can train for and sleep. Exactly like a sport. Exactly like it. So if you want to learn how to run, what do? You go out and you buy running shoes, you get your gear, you get your your tunes, right? And you get somebody to teach you what the right form should be. And then you practice and you practice and you practice. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Is get the right gear. Make sure you got a good bed. Make sure you got a good pillow, good sheets. You got an eye mask if that's something that's good for you. Earphones if you want. Earplugs if you got a snoring bed partner. Make your environment super sweet for sleep, and then level it in. Go into your swim lane, right? If my swim lane is going to bed at midnight and waking up at 6:13, then screw it. That's what I'm gonna do. I challenge everybody to try it for 30 days. Just try it for 30 days. I can almost guarantee you your life will change.
Wow, what a fantastic note to end on. Thank you so much, Doctor.
You bet.
And I'm going to read your book now.
Please.
The Power of When. And people can learn, it's thesleepdoctor.com.
It is. And people can find the book at thepowerofwhen.com and all that good stuff.
And you've got a great TED talks, and you're everywhere. So spreading the word.
I am quite everywhere. That is true.
Thanks so much for your passion. Thanks for making the world a better place. Thanks for serving others. We really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you, man. I'm excited to hear the podcast and hear the song.
All right. Well, I'm going to get a good night's sleep. And then
Absolutely. Sleep on it, brother.
Thanks very much.
All right. Talk soon.
I lived with a lion. It was a nightmare. She woke me early in the morning. You don't do that to a bear. I dated a dolphin, an insomniac, and I made it with a wolf, but barely made it back. So are you my kind of girl? Come over and sleep with me. I like you, baby, come and sleep with me. We need to try it, baby, sleep with me. Compatibility, sleep with me. So what's your chronotype, baby? Are you good for me? I need your chronotype, baby. Let's try it and see. Do the chronotype quiz to check if we match. Turn on your sleeping app, baby. Let's take a quick nap. Never live with a lion. It's a nightmare. Wakes you early in the morning. You don't do that to a bear. So are you my kind of girl? Come over and sleep with me. your chronotype, baby? Are you good for me? I need your chronotype, baby. Let's try it and see. Do the chronotype quiz to check if we match. Turn on your sleeping app, baby. Let's take a quick nap. So what's your chronotype, baby? Are you good for me? I need your chronotype, baby. Let's try it and see. Do the chronotype quiz to check if we match. Turn on your sleeping app, baby. Let's take a quick nap. So what's your chronotype, baby? Are you good for me? I need your chronotype, baby. Let's try it and see. Do the chronotype quiz to check if we match. Turn on your sleeping app, baby. Let's take a quick nap.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review on your podcast app. If you'd like to hear the song again, just go to Spotify, Deezer, iTunes, stream it till your heart's content, or even better, because 1,000 streams buys me a cup of coffee, is to pay $1 on Podsongs.com. And all that money goes to pay for the musicians, Maurizio Sanicola and Massimino Bozza, and my researcher Dori Verba, and a cup of coffee. Alright, thanks very much. See you next time.